Shalom all. Ariel Tzadok here from the KosherTorah school at KosherTorah.com, bringing you another one of our live lessons here on Facebook, and God be willing, soon after that, we'll be posting on YouTube. It's been a while since I've been able to be with you guys live. I'm in Europe right now, taking care of a lot of personal and other business here, meeting the needs of our students here who, been with us for a very, very long time and never really had the opportunity to actually be with them. So Baruch Hashem, very honored to be with my many, many students and many things happening. So Baruch Hashem, as things go by, we'll, make things publicly known, I guess. But anyway, I couldn't let the time go by without discussing what we call Nadundi Day, the topic of the time. Just to give us a timestamp here, it's October 2018. We've just finished all of the high holidays. So we are right now at the new cycle of the Torah readings. And this Shabbat, of course, is Parashat Bereshit. Now, I have to admit, Parashat Bereshit is so intimidating. It's the Parsha that, believe it or not, I like the least. Why? Because it contains so much material in it that you really can't cover it in any one single class. The Secrets of Genesis, this week's Parsha covers the first 6 chapters of the text. It begins obviously with creation and goes all the way up to the introduction of Noah. Next week's portion, of course, we'll discuss Noah and the flood, but everything is discussed now. Creation, man, Garden of Eden, the fall of the angels. There's so much there. Many years ago, I did an entire series on the Secrets of Genesis. Gosh, I don't even know if I have those lessons available anymore. I'm going to have to try to find them. What I'm planning to do right now is to redo them from scratch, right here, right now. While I was in the United States, our normal time, Eastern time zone right now in the United States, it's 11 p.m. Where I'm in Europe right now, it's 5 a.m., which actually makes it pretty good because it's still too early to say our morning prayers. Remember, in our Kabbalistic traditions, we always recite our prayers with the rising of the sun, Hanetzahama. So it's even too early for that right now. So it's perfect timing for us to have our shiur. So that's Bezrat Hashem, what we're going to do right now. So, turning to the topic, the Secrets of Genesis. My goodness, like I said, there's just such an overwhelming amount of material. Where do we start? You have so many books, so many commentaries, so many commentators. Let's just lay down some basic principles. All right? When it comes to studying the Bible in general, I think the greatest disservice done to the texts, plural. Remember, the Bible is not a book. It is a compilation of books written over literally many centuries. And no one should ever think of the Bible as a single book. All right? I think the greatest disservice done to all of them is translation. Whether it's English, French, or whatever other language one reads the Bible in, there are just certain nuances of language in the original Hebrew which never seem to get translated properly. You can take a simple word like bereshit, all right, in the beginning or at first, depends how you want to translate the word, and you miss the subtle nuances because everybody reads Genesis, first chapter, the creation story, and the major problem, of course, in the United States with certain of the more fundamentalist Christian groups and certain Jewish groups now, is that they tend to read what the Bible says in Genesis 1 literally, as if God created the world in an actual 6 physical days based upon our present enumeration of time. Really? How on earth do we ever come to such a conclusion? Because the Bible uses the word day to describe creation, but the basic normal concepts no one ever bothers to even contemplate. For example, in creation, As we know, it says right in the Bible there, day 4 was the day that the sun and the moon were created. Well, if the sun and the moon were created on day 4 and a day, remember that's decided, we say again, Earth rotates, goes around the sun and, rotates on its own orbit. And we measure days by what? Sunrise and sunset. Well, if you didn't have a day, if you didn't have a sun, how do you measure a day on days 1, 2, and 3? Well, God had his holy Rolex, I guess. Well, remember another thing about the measurement of time. The measure of time is relative, and it actually revolves around perception. So, for example, you and I, if we're going to argue the age of the universe, we're going to sit and say, okay, God created the universe in 6 days because that's what the Bible said. And according to the fundamentalists, the day is just as long, the hour is as long, or the day is long, just as it is today. Okay, let's just, for argument's sake, say that that is true. And you can go and look at all of modern science. The vast majority of its discoveries are pretty accurate and true in that respect, in all honesty there. And say the Big Bang happened 13 plus billion years ago. Well, okay, how do I reconcile 13 or so billion years with 6 days? Well, what happened in 13 billion years? A whole bunch of different things, okay? And how long does it take for each stage of these 13 billion years to go by? Let's just argument's sake and say 3 billion years per. We'll squeeze that in, 3 billion years. We'll make each one kind of like a day. Okay. How then, or how fast, or how slow do things go? Could God do 3 billion years of work in a day? Oh, good gosh, if God could create the universe, I think he could speed up time. Speed up time. That's a curious concept. What is the actual speed of time? We know that the speed of light is something, but what exactly is time? Space, time? These are real deep concepts when you want to discuss these things in science. Time moves kind of like its own pace. Let's bring this down to our personal experiences. Some things happen in our personal lives very, very fast. Other things happen in our personal lives very, very slow. What is the true criteria definition of speed? How fast is too fast? How slow is too slow? Who defines that? Now, you can have a criteria of individuals who want to get together and look at a phenomena and state, this phenomena is going too fast, or this phenomena is going too slow. But nevertheless, the phenomena is moving at its own pace. Is the definition of criteria, in other words, the definition of fast or slow, by the others observing an accurate portrayal of the reality of the circumstance? Who's to say? Time moves at its own pace, and is a point that Einstein made very clearly. Time is relative. In other words, the definition of the speed of time moves at its own pace in its own context. All right, you want to measure time? I've got my watch on here. We can go boom, 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 seconds, measuring seconds. Okay, so what is then the normal speed of time? Well, you want to say, well, how many seconds are in a minute? How many minutes are in an hour? How many hours are in a day? That's how we measure time. Okay, that gives us a numerical number. But what about the flow of nature? What about the flow of anything? How fast is water moving in a moving stream? How fast is the wind blowing? Now you say, well, if it's a hurricane wind, that's fast. By what criteria of definition? Those who are observing it, those who are affected negatively by it, would consider hurricane gale force winds to be bad. It's too fast, too fast within the context of a human experience. But for nature, which develops hurricanes and gale force winds, maybe that's a cleansing force for the earth, and therefore a necessary one. So that criteria of definition of speed of time is subjective to the observer. And I think that's a very important point to understand when we want to try to, reconcile 6 days of creation with 13 billion years of, I'm going to use that magic word no one likes, evolution. Understand now, time moves at its own pace. Every one of us who've ever paid attention could have an experience in which you could just kind of like zoning out and watching the world around you, and things kind of like seem to slow down. Or is it your mind that's speeding up? For anyone who's ever been in an adrenaline, speed-like situation of an emergency, a sport event, or a military encounter of the like, you see as if time slows down. Not that time is going any slower. The watch is still ticking at the same pace, but your perception is different. Well, God's perception of the universe and our perception of the universe, I think, is very, very different. So God could use the term 6 days to create the universe. And that's definition of time by God's criteria, not ours. And this is even echoed in a point by a verse that we find later in the Psalms, where it says that the day of God is like 1,000 years. All right? It didn't say that it's exactly 1,000 years. It says Ke'elef shanim etmol. It's kind of like. Which means that God's passage of time and our passage of time is different. Does it really surprise us that God sees things differently than we do? Isaiah 55, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts, my ways are higher than your ways. So therefore, when we come to understand the concept of time as described in Genesis, we should know and understand, like everything else in the Torah, it's speaking from God's perspective and not our own. So 6 days of creation was a God days. How long was a God the day? Oh, we have all kinds of philosophers and people, they'll go and debate and argue and try to analyze and make things understood and say if it's this way or that and whatever. Why do I say it in such a way? Because ultimately, no one knows what a God day is. We can make all kinds of understandings. Professor Gerald Schroeder in his book, Genesis and the Big Bang, great book. If you've never read it, it should be still available on Amazon. Great source material to give you a really interesting understanding of this material. Check it out. My point in discussing this topic is real simple. When it comes to understanding the Bible from a Jewish, Christian, or any other point of view, you must start to not look at things as childlike stories, in which you just read a translation and think as if it began with the words once upon a time. I remember learning Bible stories when literally I was a kid, and that's pretty much the way we learned them. Once upon a time. And I remember even in my Jewish Bible, which had like pictures in it, they had a picture of like a little old man sitting on a cloud somewhere, waving his magic hand and everything coming into being. And that was supposedly God. And that's the way kids think of these things. The entire concept of God really needs to be understood as well. What exactly is God? Now, if again you talk within a religious context, God is, of course, God is creator, God is king, God is father, God is this. You'll notice all of these appellations or terms that we use to describe God make God very human sounding, right? Creator. Well, if he is a creator, I'm the created, so I have a relationship with God. God is the king, therefore I am his servant. I have that relationship of subservience. God is my father. right? I have that relationship of love and bonding and guidance. Okay, that's one way of looking at it. But you'll notice, if you look later in the Bible in the Ten Commandments, it says you're not supposed to have any image of God. That image is not only that it won't make a physical image, little old man on a cloud sitting somewhere, but even a mental construct. The Bible speaks of creation occurring with the name Elohim. Elohim is not the official name of God. God's name is Yud Ke Vav Ke. That's introduced later. But Elohim actually means the power, the force, if you will, because Elohim is a word that's used later in the book of Deuteronomy to even refer to authorities, human authorities, like judges in a court are called the Elohim. And the word, yes, is plural. And every commentator is going to go and say that there's this reason why the name of God, singular monotheism, is plural. And when you're a scholar, you look at that and you get a little smile and says, oh, I can recognize all the reasons for all of these things. But you're still left with a plural word describing the singular God. I think that one of the best understandings of this is actually given by the rabbis, who in a midrashic teaching, midrashic means like a legendary story like teaching, that God consulted with his creatures, the angels, and created the heavens and the earth. Now you can sit and scratch your nose here like I'm doing right now. Wait a second. God consulted with his angels and created the heavens and the earth. Does that mean that the angels came like before the heavens and the earth? Well, how is that possible? And what does that mean with this word Elohim? Okay, let's explain some things now. And these are things that really you need to understand the oral teachings, specifically of what we call the Kabbalah, to have any understanding of what we're talking about. That which we call God exists as a reality far beyond anything that any mind in existence can actually comprehend. And I say that with regards to human minds, extraterrestrial minds, angelic minds, or any other spiritual mind, any other kind. The ultimate essence of God is something that we call in Hebrew the Ein Sof, which means without end. It's the original, if you will, Kabbalistic way of referring to an ultimate infinite reality. How do you define the infinite? How do you define infinity? But what term should we use? We can refer to the infinite. Is the infinite a conscious, sentient? Should I call it a being? Is it being? Is it not being? I don't know. These are metaphysical, contemplative topics. All we can say about God pretty much is what we can't say. It's like a negative appellation, essentially saying we don't know. When it comes to God, we don't know. But everyone's going to say, well, I know God in my heart. I know God in my life. I agree. You most likely do. I do. We do. But that is the revelation of God, the expression of God, not the essence of God. You might remember again from the book of Exodus, when even Moses asked to understand God, and he said, no man can see my face and live. No one sees the face of God. And remember, that face is not physical. It's a symbolic way of saying the true essence thereof. So the true essence thereof most certainly could not be called by this plural word, Elohim, authority. But an interesting point that is brought down is, as you know, in Hebrew, every letter is also a number. So if you look at the word Elohim as a number, it is the numerical value of the word 86, which is the same numerical value of the Hebrew term hateva, which means nature. So essentially it's saying, in the beginning, nature created the heavens and the earth. That might not sound really religious enough for me. The laws of nature created heavens and the earth? The answer to that, pretty much, yes. Now, many of you might remember the late famous physicist Stephen Hawking. He was an atheist, and he came to the conclusion that the heavens and the earth, creation, wasn't created by a God. He says it was created by the laws of nature. That was such a silly statement to make. I think it's a statement of the glaringly obvious. If you have laws of nature, doesn't that by definition conclude that there is a, in quote, law giver? The laws had to come from somewhere or something. Yes, I think that's a logical statement. The laws of nature created themselves. You listen to some modern atheists, and they'll say, yes, everything came from nothing. Really? And how did that happen? If there's nothing there, where did something come from? Well, it's a mystery. Yeah, it certainly is. The atheist view that something came from nothing, an absolute contradiction to every experience of every reality that we know, in my opinion, is a greater leap in faith than any religious statement of any religion in the world. Essentially, that means atheists have more faith than anyone else, because they believe a big whopping tale that no one can believe. Something must be there, even in the nothing. When we refer to God as the infinite, the Ein Sof, we call that the nothing, but that nothing is a something. But how can something be a nothing, and how can nothing be a something? Starting to get the picture of when we say God's thoughts, God's ways are higher than ours? Okay, get back to Elohim. The word Elohim, and again, you can go into Zoharic teachings. Everybody gives a moralistic or a midrashic understanding of the word. But essentially, we're dealing with the creation of what we call the heavens and the earth. A point that's made is it's not all of creation. The heavens and the earth is our universe. Our universe exists as a dual reality. We call it in the old language, du partsufim, dual faces that stand face by face like this. These are the two realities. In our language that we understand, we call that the physical world and the spiritual world. I think modern science is starting to pick up on this with what they understand as matter and dark matter, possibly dark energy as well. I'm not the physicist, so I can't comment on all these things, but they know that our universe, that which we exist in, that which we see, that which is all around us, is only what, like 5% of reality, and there's a whole chunk of things I have no idea what it is. Bingo, there you go. This was all there. And beyond our universe, the Kabbalah teaches us there are even higher, greater realities. One of those higher, greater realities, in the Kabbalah speak, they call it Olam HaBiri'ah, the world of creation, is actually that mind, I just blew it there, is that realm which we call the mind, thought itself. Thought, mind, is the ultimate highest reality of things. It transcends emotion, transcends work. It transcends time, transcends space. This is the foundation of that which we call mind over matter. That mind is ultimately that third dimension. We read about this in the Sefer Yetzirah, where it speaks of the three dimensions being olam, world or space, shana, year or time, there's space and time, and the third one, nefesh, soul or consciousness, mind. These are the three realities in which we exist. So when we're going to discuss Genesis and the beginning and Elohim, we must recognize, obviously from the context, Elohim exists outside of the heavens and the earth because it is the creator of the heavens and the earth. And if the heavens and the earth are the laws of physics, then Elohim must be the law giver. And that puts the word Elohim right into its historical and appropriate biblical context of Elohim being the judges, the lawgivers. the authority, nature. Oh boy, we just reconciled modern science with the religious context and understand why a word would be plural. Well, wait a second, isn't that God? Well, remember now something about nature. Very curious and interesting midrash, teaching of the rabbis. It states that to every single blade of grass even, there's an angel over it that makes it grow. Okay, that's a lovely little teaching. You got a little entity there with like a little white robe, saying, grow, grow, grow. Again, we think we got to go beyond our fairy tales. Let's go back to this discussion of matter, dark matter, discussion of these two parts of being. There are two levels of reality. That level which we know as existing in space and time, and a higher reality, which we individually can access through, you got it, the mind. That's why universal, across all human experience in every culture, in every place around the world throughout history, there are spiritual and or religious teachings. Sum it all up, we call it one word: meditation, which ultimately means expanding the powers of the mind. The mind is what connects us to the Elohim. The mind connects us to that realm which is outside of space and time. And as we expand consciousness, perception, oh, were we talking about that earlier with regards to the measure of time? Yeah. The power of mind can take us from this world in which we live and bring us into that parallel world and enable us to recognize the greater reality around us. That is what the meditative process is all about. We teach prophetic Kabbalah here at our school. The courses of meditation, which I teach, readily available for you if you want to learn. It's not about making you relax, making you feel good about yourself. Who cares about that stuff? That's like basic stuff. It's about expanding the power of your mind to understand the greater reality, which you need to experience for yourself. Because you are not an isolated individual in this world. You are part and parcel of a greater whole. You are like a tentacle, if you will, on the big long thing of an octopus. We're all connected. We're all part of a greater whole. And if you don't see it, it's because you're not looking in the right direction. Right from the beginning, Bereshit, first letter of the Hebrew Bible is a bet. Numerical values 2. What were created? 2 realities, heaven and earth, the physical, the spiritual. All kinds of meanings with that letter bet. Questions been asked for years. How come it doesn't, the Torah, if it's going to begin, why does it begin with the first letter? Aleph. How many of you want to pronounce an Aleph for me? You got it, because it's silent. The other higher world around us interacts with us like the Aleph and the Bet in a silent way. And there's movement and a flow, where in which that which is silent is always guiding that which makes movement. This is the interaction of this heaven and earth by the power of the force which guides it, which we call the Elohim. The Elohim are the powers of mind. The power of mind. Notice I switched from the plural to the singular because it's a singular mind, a singular power. Yeah, God, we'll have a better word. But God acts through many different, if you'll allow me to use the metaphor, hands. God acts through many different forms, ways, sources, powers, each of which becomes, symbolically again, the angel which stands over the individual blade of grass and states, grow. Each one of us has, and quote, our own angel. We call it our spirit guide, our Mongid in our language, right? Your guardian angel. It's not a guy, it's not a girl, it's a higher level of mind. Your mind, your access to the greater supernal mind, that which we call God. Elohim. So therefore, Bereshit, at first, what was created were the heavens and the earth. One dimension, another dimension, two parts of the same whole. Hidden, Aleph, revealed, Bet. Physical, spiritual. And the force that created it is that force which established all of its parameters, all of its structure, all of its forms. That's what a judge does. It's order. Well, that's what creation was. Order. An old Masonic term. Order out of chaos. So understand then the term Elohim are the laws of nature, because there are many. But there's only one law giver, which materializes the laws. That, again, is why Elohim is plural. To place emphasis on the multiplicity of the laws of nature. And you cannot mess around with the laws of nature. You can learn their parameters and therefore use them, which is exactly what order out of chaos is. The rest of the creation story is the development of this order out of chaos. Next verse says the world is created in tohu vabohu, chaos, confusion. Even though there's a later verse in the prophet Isaiah says the world was not created in this tohu state. Well, if it wasn't created in this tohu state, as we find in Genesis 1:2, and yet Genesis creation story happened 1:1, God created the heavens and the earth, and by verse 2, it's already in tohu and wasn't created that way. Well, how did it get that way? Obviously, something is missing between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2. And of course, the Kabbalists go into great detail about all these things, reveal to us all the secrets about the primordial worlds and the like. And I cover all those and so many other of our courses online. Go check them out. But what we're left with is a question. How did it get that way? I'm not going to answer those questions right now. Just let's say it's by divine design. And everything that the Genesis story then continues to teach is how order comes out of chaos. How things evolve one step at a time. Now think about it. God's the creator. He has all the power to do everything. He can't just go bring the world into being just the way it is and right from the scratch. Not only create the heavens and the earth, but how about creating cars and Levi's all at the same time? Everything all together. No. Everything evolved step by step. No, we don't consider evolution in any ways to be contradictory to anything in reality. Why would it be? Now, you could say, well, evolution is just accidental occurrences. Well, I've done some studies and I think I've seen, again, scientific opinions. I put question marks. I don't know what's scientific and what's not based on modern discussion. That according to the laws of statistics and mathematical probabilities, if you could take every combination of events and haphazardly allow them to happen, there hasn't been enough time since the beginning of the universe, as we can measure time, for everything to have happened the way things are now. So to think things just happened randomly and haphazardly is, again, unsubstantiated. But that doesn't mean that random events, what we think is random because of conscious limitations, don't happen. Well, they happen all the time, but they're not random. Yes, I believe in evolution. And if the modern scientist says to me, look, humanity has evolved, or this has evolved, and that has evolved, my response is, well, I'm sure that the laws of nature very much developed things progressively. Why not? Sounds like a smart plan to do. Why would you just not make everything like that? I guess the higher forces have a reason for things to develop over time. Gee, isn't that our experience too? Don't we develop over time? Not only do we grow up physically, how come we're not born as adults? How come we're not born with the wisdom and knowledge and understanding that it takes a lifetime to acquire? We have nothing. We're born with a clean slate. Our own individual lives are proof, if you will, or a mirror reflection of the creation story. So ultimately, that which we call evolution probably is true. Whether it's being explained accurately and correctly by modern atheistic science, probably not. There is definitely a guided direction to it. Carl Jung, in psychology, speaks of the development of human personality. He says we're all born with a personality, and all of life is just the process of revealing that which is inside of us to allow us to become that which we've always been. He says there's a teleological direction to psychological individuation. Fancy words for saying there's some higher power, maybe from that dark universe around us, which is guiding our reality in our personal lives to bring us experiences that enable us to materialize our inner reality, making it true. Well, if that's true with each and every one of us as individual statements of consciousness, thought, and mind, it's probably true on the collective scale of the universe itself. That the universe is thinking. The universe is alive. The universe has its own evolution, its own teleological direction of the psychological individuation of the universe as it is for the individual. And if that is indeed the case, as it seems to be, that'll explain why God uses the forms of evolution to materialize the universe. And thus we see there is no contradiction between that and us. On the contrary, it's a confirmation thereof. So our lives evolve. The universe evolves. Everything is following a higher plan, a higher pattern. That's exactly what the book of Genesis is teaching us right from the beginning. None of this 6 days of creation based upon our hours and things happen with a wave of the magic, wand of God. No, everything happens with intent, purpose, direction. We say that God spoke the universe into creation. Yehi or, wahi or, let there be light, and there was light. We know speech in our personal lives is a very powerful force. I'm speaking to you right now. Maybe you are learning from my words. Maybe I'm sharing with you things that are enlightening you. I hope so. I know. I'm trying. Now, the force of word reveals the source in mind, thought. The word is the materialization of the thought. So being that God has no actual physical form, he has no physical mouth, therefore there's no physical word that's ever being spoken. But what the term, the word of God means, the voice of God, the speech of God, is a materialization of the thought, which underlies the Elohim, which is outside of the creation itself and is the source of the laws of form of nature. Remember, Hateva Elohim. And the word materializes that. Now, let's not just jump into Christianity here when they talk on the word of God as it's referred to in the Christian Gospel of John. My understanding that word of God, what they refer to as the Logos, is understanding what we call in Hebrew the Torah. And there's a Kabbalistic teaching that said God in the beginning gazed into the Torah and from there created the world. That he looked into the laws of Torah and used them as the pattern to create the world. That's a metaphor which makes total sense in our context because the Torah is our law book. It is the guide for law. And the world is created for the force and form of law. Elohim, Hateva, laws of nature. So therefore, we understand the Torah not just as a religious book that outlines for us the sources of the Judaic practice, but as a universal guideline from which we can extract the universal law itself. As it is echoed in the words of one of the great sages in Pirkei Avot, where we said of the Torah, hafuch ba hafuch ba d'kula ba. Flip it over once, flip it over twice, everything's in it. And people have looked into the Torah, into all of the ways of understanding it in the Hebrew, have discovered codes therein, which reveal to us very profound, sublime secrets, not just about philosophy or psychology, but about the actual operations of natural law, science, scientific formulas. There are numerical values and interactions in our Genesis stories which speak about the Fibonacci sequence, the creation of spirals, and other types of things which reveal to us very profound truths, the likes of which are very hard to deny, and that is that the Torah, as we have it, is obviously far more complex than just a bunch of stories that were put together thousands of years ago to give us a kind of once upon a time scenario of the past. Indeed, we have a teaching in the name of Shimon Bar Yochai written in the Zohar, where in which it's stated that if all there is to our Torah is just the stories that we read, we can write a heck of a better one even today. But when we unravel these stories, get into the depths, get into the definitions, we recognize that there's so much more into this Torah, because the Torah is studied. There's that word again, study. What is the study? How do we study? Oh, that's right, with our minds. Minds is consciousness. And as you expand consciousness through the powers of meditation, you perceive things in the Torah you did not perceive before. And therefore you have revelation. Revelations which will lead you to understanding greater truths about the reality of the universe in which we live. So maybe that's the reason why the word says flip it over. Dig deep. Understand different things. That is the secrets of the Torah. Secrets right in Genesis. Why the 6 chapters here, gosh, we haven't gone beyond the first 1 or 2 verses. And even then, I'm not doing justice to it. We've already kind of ran out of time. Like I said, years and years ago, I did a series on the secrets of Genesis. And right now, as I've been doing this class, my mind's thinking, I think it's time that we do this again. I am proposing, and this is what I'm thinking, and most likely going to materialize. We're going to do some classes now, back on Facebook, YouTube Live here in these videos. Let's go into Genesis. Let's deal with some of the deeper truths. Let's expand mind, expand consciousness. Let's tap into the Elohim. Let's go back into those laws of nature, the forces and the forms which underlie the Word of God, which materializes the mind and the thought. Let's explore. Let's see what we can discover. Let's see what we can know. I think we're going to find that most of that knowledge is going to rise up from within us rather than something we're going to learn from outside us. Consciousness. The individual consciousness taps into the greater collective consciousness. Wasn't that a word that Carl Jung uses in psychology? Oh yes, son of a gun. The universal mind, that's God. The individual mind, that's you and me. Let's learn the connection. Future classes, that's what we're going to do. Okay, kind of ran out of time here, but I want you to think about these things. If you want to learn meditative technique and practices, go check out my course on KosherTorah.com. We have all that material there. I counted now over 100 hours available on our YouTube channel. We have all kinds of material available for you. If you want more focused material on, for example, Judaic practice, get my book, Walking in the Fire. Learn these things, experience these things, see with your own eyes. Go beyond the limitations of fundamentalism and learn the truths of what the Torah actually teaches. Expand your consciousness. See the greater world around us. All right, on that note, let me conclude. I want to thank you all for joining me, welcoming me back. Bezat Hashem, we'll see you next time. Take care. Ariel Bar Tzadok here from the Kosher Torah School, KosherTorah.com. Talk to you soon. Shalom.